to The Howl. In today's episode, we'll discuss why Principal Rodgers ended his basketball career and what he plans to do with Hersey.
Hello, Hersey Huskies. I'm Becca Featherstone.
And I'm Tina Kresnicki.
And welcome to The Howl.
We would like to welcome you today with our new principal, Mr. Rodgers. Mr. Rodgers, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. We'd like to start off by asking you about your childhood.
What did your home life look like growing up?
My childhood was very interesting because it was unfortunately a situation where my mother didn't know my father for very long. In fact, their relationship was all of just a couple of days. And then I was born 9 months later. So I never saw my father. I grew up with just my mother, and she also had 4 other children. So I had 4 sisters and myself. So that was the area in which I kind of grew up.
Yeah. So in that, what are some of the biggest struggles that you faced or still face to this day?
I think every child it would be great if everyone could be raised by both a mom and a dad, but I understand that that's not the case for a lot of children. So me only being raised by my mother, and oftentimes she wasn't there, I think it's very important that we have adults in our lives. Specifically for me, it was teachers and administrators, like my principal when I was a kid, and I looked up to them, and they were very responsible leaders and role models for me, and I think that really helped me out with just making better decisions in my life as a child.
Yeah. In school, did you think you were a hardworking student, or how did you identify in terms of character?
I would say I was very average, and we always preach about being excellent and being the best, at least when I was a child. But the adults around me were very good about sending the message about just doing your best. So, when you're young, you don't really know what your best is, and as you get older, you start to push yourself and challenge yourself a little bit more. So I felt like as I got older, I just learned that my threshold was a little, longer and bigger or wider than I thought it was.
Did your home life affect your school abilities in any way?
Absolutely. One of my sisters was a very, very intelligent young lady, and she really took the time to encourage me to read books that were probably a little advanced for me in my age, but I still took on the challenge to read them, and I feel like it taught me a lot about growing up in my particular situation. And it was always about integrity. My sister would always tell me, do your own work. It's not, don't copy other people's work. It's be authentic, be yourself, and just do your best.
Yeah. So then I guess oppositely, what would you define as your biggest accomplishments, or what are you most proud of that you overcame?
So basketball turned out to be a key for me in that I don't know that I would have gone to college because we absolutely couldn't afford it. And like I said, I was an average student, so I wasn't going to get any type of academic scholarship. So lo and behold, I figured out that I could play basketball. I wasn't spectacular, but somehow I got a college scholarship to Loyola. And then I just started taking advantage of it, finding that threshold, pushing it. I got better and better and better, and eventually ended up trying out for the Indiana Pacers. They cut me, which was hard for me, but eventually I ended up getting a job in Europe, so I played professionally in Greece and in France. Wow. So I'm proud of that.
That's really impressive,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What made you switch from basketball to education?
So living in Europe for that time, I was kind of not lonely, but just away from home. And though I was doing great, and I was, you're making money and you're enjoying Europe, I got injured one time, and I could have recovered and worked out and made my ankle better, but I just got to the point where I was like, I think I'm ready to jump into the real world. And it was always going to be education for me. So I came back to the United States, went to Loyola University where I played, coached the women's basketball team. And while I was doing that, I was getting my master's in education, and then started teaching, and then became an administrator.
Oh, where were you in Europe?
The island of Cyprus, which is half Greek and half Turkish, and then the south of France for the second year.
Nice, that's really impressive.
Thank you.
How long did you play for?
1 year in Cyprus, and then half a year until my injury in France. I had thought about maybe going back and playing more. I mean, I figured I could play basketball till I was like 35, 40 years old, but I really, really wanted to start making, I guess, an impact in a different way. Basketball is great, because everyone's like, "Oh, you're so cool, you're the best, and you see that you get a lot of friends and people admire you. And I eventually started looking at that differently. Like, I looked up to Michael Jordan. I thought he was like a hero to me. But then I did my student teaching, and all of a sudden, teachers became heroes to me. And I was like, I gave all that like praise and time to Jordan, which he's a great guy. I worked for him. I thought that was really, really cool. But he just plays a game, and teachers do a lot more. That's I think more meaningful to society.
Yeah. You mentioned you had an injury. What happened?
I have like on my right ankle. There's a surgical scar. It was like a compound fracture where I was jumping and I came down and landed the wrong way and it just snapped. And like I said, I could have healed, but I really felt like it was just time to make that change in my career.
Yeah. So like through this like journey of like your life, how do you define yourself through like what you've achieved? Like what kind of life lessons have you learned through that?
We all have the capability and the responsibility to look out for other people, and I'm scanning the world. I'm scanning our school. I'm looking for ways to build people up. I just feel like the more responsible, kind individuals that we can graduate from Hersey High School and put them out there in society, the better things will be as a whole. I mean, I actually really believe that. People think it's pie in the sky or corny, but that's where I am right now, and that's how I'd like to finish the rest of my career.
No, I really like that perspective. I completely agree. I don't think it's too hocus pocus.
Thank you.
So, obviously, coming back to the United States, I want to transition to your family life now. What does it look like, and how did your like childhood affect how you raised your family today?
Wow, that's a great question. So you always, if you grow up without a father, then you say, well, I'm going to be the world's best father. So I have a son. He's 23. I have a daughter. She's a junior at Meadows. And I really try to put anything and everything I can into helping them shape themselves to be people who will make a positive difference in the world. And I think I'm very happy. I'm not overly like proud, but I'm happy that they seem to be doing okay so far. And I want them to be a positive influence. I don't want them to take away from community. I want them to build community. And I think the way that I grew up sort of framed my mind to make sure that I was not going to leave my children in a situation where they didn't have that guidance.
Going back to education, where did your education career start off with?
So growing up in Indiana, I went to a high school. It was actually called Michigan City Rodgers. So the town was called Michigan City, and it was actually my last name, Rodgers. But I don't know. That just was a weird occurrence. So after going to that high school, I was not offered any scholarships to play basketball in anywhere in the United States of America. There was a person on my team. His name was Keith Gales. He was very, very good at Loyola University. They wanted to recruit him and give him a scholarship. So one day after a game in like December or January, the coaches from Loyola came to take Keith out to dinner so he would sign his letter of intent to play for Loyola. And he was my ride home because I didn't have a car. I got my first car when I came back from Europe at 25. And Keith said, "Can Kier go with us?" So I went to dinner with the two coaches, and they asked me, "Where are you going to play basketball?" And I said, "Nowhere." And they said, "You should come to Loyola." And they gave me a scholarship. No other university in the United States of America. Wow. And for whatever reason, they gave me a scholarship. And I was not that good. But when I got there, it was really tough because everyone was good. And they were looking at me, and I was treated so poorly. Like they were like, "Coach, what are you doing? Why did you give this guy a scholarship? He's terrible." And I probably would have lost it. But another guy connected with me, came over to my dorm at like 10 o'clock at night one night and goes, "We need to work out." and we'd work out and play basketball from like 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning, and I did that a lot. And then I became a very, very good player at Loyola, and I am now a top 20 scorer and rebounder there. And I would have never got that chance if someone didn't reach out and reach their hand out to me and say, I'm going to help this kid. So I will do that for other people for the rest of my life.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Thanks.
That's like actually a really amazing story. That's really awesome. So after your first teaching job, how did you somehow land at Trails?
Well, hold on. Where was your first teaching job?
In the Chicago Public Schools. I taught English, and but I always wanted to be a principal, so you have to go to school to get this license. It was called a Type 75, and it was March of 1999, and I got it in the mail, and I was so happy. I went to my principal, and I said, I am going to be an assistant principal in Rockford, Illinois, and she was very upset and said, she wanted me to wait until the end of the year. But I wanted to do it, and I left. I drove out to Rockford, interviewed. I got the job the next day, so I was an assistant principal for 1 year in a high school. That was my only experience except for now working at Hersey. And then they gave me a principal job the year after, so I was a principal for the past 22 years. And Dr. Schuler reached out to me when we found out that Mr. Sisson was his health wasn't what it could be, and we all got together, and they thought it was a good idea for him to take this year off. And I am so grateful that Dr. Schuler came to me and asked me if I would consider this position. I was like thrilled, just beyond thrilled. Very happy to be here.
You worked at River Trails. So how was that like?
River Trails was I was a principal in 3 middle schools, so that was my 4th middle school, and I was there for 12 years. It is an amazing community. It seems like every student here at Hersey went to River Trails Middle School, but I know that's not the case. But I love the kids. I love the parents. And I thought it was the fact that I'm here, and this is where most River Trail students go. I don't know. I feel like there's just some weird thing in the universe that's happening that I was able to, that we're connected again. It just every day I'm so thankful, and I think about it all day for the past 4 weeks. My wife's like, get over it, but I just appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Did you go straight from Trails to Hersey, or was there any other jobs?
So after River Trails Middle School, I went to the specialized schools, which is, a lot of people don't know about them. So we have 6 traditional schools here in District 214, but then there's also what's called specialized schools. So I was the principal there for the last year during the pandemic, and there are 6 of them. There's the Newcomer Center, there's the Academy, there's Vanguard, there's YAP, which is the Young Adult Program, and there is the Early College Center. So I was the principal for all of those programs, and it's really weird though, because we didn't have a lot of students last year, but the ones that did come, we had a great time, and they worked really hard, and I love the staff over there. But I couldn't pass up this opportunity. I was only there for 1 year, but I'm here now.
How did your experience with Vanguard compare to River Trails?
Vanguard is an amazing program. There's an associate principal over there by the name of Mr. Scott Schulten, and he just does. I think if he took his shirt off and he had a T-shirt on, it would have a V on it, because he does anything and everything he can for the Vanguard students. And they're very special kids over there. They very unique learners, but they're very passionate about their education, and I enjoyed the time with them.
What are your honest first impressions of Hersey?
Wow, honest first impressions. I love the energy. We have almost 2,100 students, and here's the reality. Reality is that someone would say all of your students are great and fantastic, and we all know that there are some people who do make bad decisions on occasion, and I just feel like I feel like the students, if we keep trying and pushing, I feel like we can get 100% of our students to get on board with just building a solid community. So I think the potential for having like no student left behind, like no, at the end of your senior year, whatever year you are, that every one of our graduates, we want them to feel good about what's going to happen that next year out of high school. Whether you go to a 2-year school, 4-year school, whether you're just going to get a job, just don't want anyone to feel like they weren't prepared. And I think here at Hersey, because of the staff, the amazing staff, I just think that the opportunity is greater here to reach all of our students.
How do we compare to Vanguard and Trails?
Oh man, if my daughter hears this, she's gonna. So my daughter goes to Meadows, and I actually have to not talk about Hersey when I'm home because she hears the greatness in my voice. She hears the excitement. My wife has said she's never heard this tone in my voice and it comes out in my expression. I have never ever been as happy as I am now as an educator, and this is my 23rd year. So this is, I know we're not perfect, but man, it sure feels good. Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned like some students who don't make the best decisions. Do you plan on like enforcing any rules or any things?
Yeah, it's like I've tried over the years not to even use the word rule. It's just like, if you think about it, it's about good decision making, and high school students should be at that point where, like, socially, emotionally, you would be able to make good decisions, knowing what will happen if you vape, or knowing if you use profanity in the midst of a crowd of people. I mean, we sort of represent each other, and if we could just get everyone to have that same amount of integrity. I get it. Some kids go home and their life is great. They got mom and dad, and they've got a nice house, and they've got cars, and everything's wonderful. But some kids go home and life is miserable for them. They're kids with mental wellness issues, and I would tell them that that's no reason not to give your best in school, and you've got to just understand that we go through ups and downs, and we're going to do everything we can to keep our school safe, orderly, and productive. I don't want to, we don't want to have rules for everything. Like I mentioned about hats and hoods in the classroom. Teachers are like the CEOs of their classroom, so they get the right to say how a student conducts themselves in that class. And I'd hope our teachers we trust them to make good decisions with, like, just because a teacher says take your hood off, first of all, it should be please take your hood off. But then again, first of all, the student should know that in this particular class, they shouldn't wear their hood, because the teacher doesn't know if someone's wearing headphones underneath it. It's just it's an expression of respect for an environment. And I just want students to, rather than say like, well, that's the rule. No, it's just that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a big rule guy. I want kids to make good decisions.
I really like your perspective on like the motivation, it's like more positive reinforcement. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it gives you guys gives students a chance to. You're all going to be adults soon, and then most of us are all going to have children, and you're going to make those same decisions, and you're going to say, "Now I get it." So the sooner we want everyone to have fun and enjoy life, but we just want people to be safe and make good decisions.
I would like to ask you to elaborate on the Mr. Rodgers neighborhood segment you have going on.
Yeah, so I am a Mr. Rodgers wannabe, meaning when I was a child, I watched the show Mr. Rodgers, the original Mr. Rodgers in the 1970s and 80s, and he was just such a mild, humble guy, and no one can find any dirt on him. No one, like usually like superstars, you find like, oh, he was a bad person, he abused his wife, or he beat his kids, or Mr. Rodgers was like awesome, and he really was genuinely a kind person. So the Mr. Rodgers neighborhood is just a way to reach out to students and teachers and staff, just to say it may be in my own head, but it's my neighborhood as far as like I want kindness, respect. I want people to be responsible. I want people to be productive. Like, why go through life and not use the skills that you have? And I'm going to play that Mr. Rodgers thing forever. Although kids don't even know who the real Mr. Rodgers is.
I love it. It's an amazing idea.
What do you plan on bringing to Hersey and the Hersey community, and like everything?
I think right now, and a lot of people might deny this, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think there's a lot of mental health issues going on with a lot of students. And so I will preach this idea that I think the answer to every issue and problem in the world is it's based on social emotional learning. So my example is, and I know this is kind of extreme, but we're going into 9/11, the anniversary, the 20-year anniversary, and if we really think of it on a global level, 20 years ago, some people hijacked planes and they crashed it into buildings in New York, and people perished. But if you go back to like why that happened, there's a religious undertone to it, that they did this in the name of religion. And if someone just really thinks about it, says, well, these people are treating my religion poorly, we should go kill other people. Like that in itself, it sounds ridiculous that you would feel as a person that your emotions get so lost that you feel like that's the best idea. And as children, if those men had some type of sense of social emotional learning, and everyone can have their own religion, but I mean, ultimately, we're not trying to harm other people. You can be upset about it, but to take another person's life, I just feel like there's so much that we can do to reach out and hit kids earlier with this stuff. I mean, we have a preschool program here that I think is amazing, and I think if we could start just teaching those skills to kids when they're growing up, then we won't have that extreme attitude, those extreme attitudes that we have out there right now. We see it in politics, like people pout. We have adults that actually pout when they don't get their way. It's like a 3-year-old drops his ice cream, cry, please cry. But a 15-year-old drops their ice cream, you shouldn't cry. It's social emotional intelligence and development. So kids out there that have issues, or they feel like, whether it be loneliness, depression, things like that, please know that I am Mr. Rodgers. I have a therapist. I talk to a person, and I think it's very good to be self-aware when you're feeling like, you can feel lonely, you can feel down. It's good to share where you are so that before it gets to a part where it's unhealthy. And I think a lot of students need to understand that there's no shame in that. And I feel like it's a lot more widespread now that the pandemic is here and we're all in these masks. The world looks differently. My childhood was way different than your childhood. And I have compassion and empathy for the students. And I know that some kids are struggling, and I just want to make sure that we can bring that social emotional learning piece here.
On the note of COVID, what was it like to be thrown into this job, like during the middle of a pandemic?
As a principal, as educational leaders, we're made for this. Like with leadership, not everything's going to be great. This is really the first huge problem or issue that we've had, and so it's caused everyone to rethink the way we do education. And I just feel like you have to critically think about everything. You can't just make random decisions. Every decision we make, we got to really put some time into it. We need student input, we need parent input, we need staff input, so that we can make decisions that help all of us, because we've never been in this situation before. And I also think we have to have perspective. Think about a middle school child or a high school kid in Normandy, France in 1943, in the middle of a war. Like, we're dealing with a pandemic. They had bombs and planes going over their heads, and they're trying to go to school. How scary for them. So we put things in perspective, and people say, you know what, it could be worse. But at the same time, understanding that some people are really struggling right now. Just a state of mind that you have to be in.
Mm-hmm. On the note of changing things up, what about homecoming and prom? Are you excited to plan them, and how do you think COVID will affect them?
So homecoming, all we've said is we're having a dance. All the high schools, all the District 214's high schools, I think we've agreed that if you hold it outside, you don't have to contact trace. And contact tracing, right now as we sit here speaking, Mr. Krajicek is in his office contact tracing students who have been close to someone who has COVID in our building. So if we had homecoming inside and one person got was positive, it would be a disaster to contact trace. So it's the middle of October. We're hoping that weather is like just crisp enough that we can do something fun. I'm hearing about a specific theme. Do you guys know what the theme is? Okay, I can't share a thing because I just heard it as a secret. But I really want them to do. I want them to just go for sky is the limit. Let's make it as fun as we can. So I came from River Trails Middle School. We used to have these things called rec nights. I haven't told anyone this, but my thought is like homecoming. A dance might not necessarily be for everyone. It is for a lot of people, and for those people, great. But could we offer some other opportunities for them to do some other things, to be at homecoming, but maybe they're in the gym playing indoor soccer or playing basketball or playing PS5, but the ones that want to be partying in wherever we do the dance, do that. But just let's get more people here so that when they are 21, 22 years old, they go, oh yeah, I went to my homecoming and it was fun and it was different. Don't we have to start rethinking? It doesn't have to be the same just because that's the way it was 60 years ago. I want to have a homecoming dance, but I want to expand it to bigger things. But that's student council does that, and I don't want my first year. I don't want to come in here like changing things up, and they'll say like, "Oh, he's trying to make it like middle school again." But I just want to include more students.
I think that's such a fun idea. I hope they vote for that. That's so fun.
Talking with COVID and like the fall, how are football games gonna run since we're having a home game?
Last Friday, I went to the Rolling Meadows opener. My daughter is on Palms, and I looked up in the stands and I saw like 500 kids just packed together, and it kind of freaked me out. I was so happy on one end to see they were all there having fun. I saw 4 masks on out of the 500, and I thought, oh my Lord, what is going to happen in like 2 or 3 weeks when things start moving? But I was just thinking about our game Friday. I hope it's as packed. I hope people are just careful. I want everyone to have fun. I've never been so excited for a football game in my life. It'll be my first high school game since I was an assistant principal 20-something years ago. And yeah, we want it to be not normal. We want it to be better than it's ever been before. So
awesome.
Are you coming to the game tomorrow?
Oh, I'm absolutely there. I've been waiting for a long time for this. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be there shooting the game.
Excellent.
We'll be shooting the game.
So are you actually commentate it, or are you just video?
I'm not commentating. I'm just doing camera, but we do have people that are like announcing the game.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
In the black box, and they're like, touchdown, blah, 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 blah. I don't know football, but
Yeah.
I cannot wait. Yeah, I'm there.
It's
for
awesome.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for coming in today. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Of course. All right. We'll see you later, Hersey Huskies. Thank you for listening in.